Alrighty, welcome back to episode 8 of the Strength Institute podcast. Today we have Zoe Kruger here with us, who is a powerlifter and also a powerlifting referee, which is what we're going to talk about more so today. Zoe has refed at 23 different meets, ranging across 2 different federations. So that's GPC and CAPO. And she is actually a national level referee in both of those federations and looking, I believe, to soon upgrade to a world level referee in one or both.
Probably CAPO this year and hopefully GPC next year.
Perfect, which would allow you, I'm assuming, then to be able to referee at World Championships. Yep, fantastic. In addition to those 23, well, I think including those 23 competitions that she has refed at, they range from local to state to national level here in Australia. Yep. But you've also been involved in some of Australia's biggest invitational events, such as ProRaw 10, ProRaw 11 and Big Dogs 3. Yep. And for those who don't know, that's some of the best lifters from around the world that get invited to come to these meets, and they're throwing around some of the pretty incredible weights.
Yeah,
so
crazy weights.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zoe, thanks very much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. I guess I just wanted to start with how you got into powerlifting and then how you got into refereeing.
Yeah, all right. Well, I kind of stumbled across powerlifting by accident. I was in a commercial gym. And I was invited to come to a strength and conditioning boot camp in my hometown. I'm from Tamworth in New South Wales. And as part of that boot camp, the powerlifting movements featured quite strongly. And I just fell in love with that. Quit my commercial gym, joined that gym, trained there for about 3 or 4 months. And then I moved to Perth for work. And I've been here ever since. I think that was in February 2016 that I moved here and I found Muscle Pit and been training consistently since then. Competed 8 times, coming up to my 9th time in 3 years in 6 weeks time, 7 weeks time at Nationals. Yeah.
Nationals?
Yeah.
CAPO or?
CAPO Nationals,
yep.
yeah.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's pretty much it.
And then what made you decide to jump into the reffing?
I think I wanted to give back. I saw, obviously, sports like powerlifting don't run without the help of volunteers. So I started out helping on the score desk, and I think I saw refereeing as a natural progression to that. Wanted to give it a go, so I jumped in and haven't looked back since. So I've been refereeing since about July 2017, and I've done the 23 meets in about 23 months. So
okay, well, so a
lot
of different meets there.
Yeah,
that's good. Can you talk about some of the bigger meets or the funner meets that you've been a part of and what that was like?
Yeah, I think I was asked to go do ProRaw 10 last year. So that was a massive opportunity, one that I didn't expect to have so quickly. I think it was only my 5th or 6th meet refereeing, so that was a lot of faith put in me at that point. So I was very nervous, very scared, but it was very intense. 3-day competition. It's held in the Arnold, I guess, the 3-day Arnold.
The Arnold
Classic.
Australias?
The
Arnold Classic Australia?
Yeah, so it's held within that exhibition. Insane lifting. I will never forget some of the lifts that I refereed. Probably the one that stood out most was he's regarded as the world's best squatter. His name's Vlad Alzahov. And at the time, he squatted the world record of 505 kilos, and I side refereed that squat, and it was perfect.
Wow.
It was insane. Then the crowd was going off. It was just nuts. Yeah. A lot of pressure.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to get to the different pressure points for you as well.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dealing with these athletes that are lifting such incredibly big weights, and not only the invitationals, but even at national level events, they're trying to break Australian records and really going for it. Do you feel a lot of pressure being a referee? I know that coming from a background of rugby, the referees cop a lot of slack from the sidelines. Have you found that in powerlifting, or is it a lot more respectful? Or what's it like when you have all this pressure? Hey, if this guy misses by a centimetre, you're going to give him a red light, and that might deprive him of an Australian record.
Look, I used to struggle a lot more than I do now. I think powerlifting, there is way more sledging than I've ever seen in any other sport with refereeing.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's something I'd like to see change. I think that's probably for a few reasons that people really dislike referees. I think one of them is probably there's no real formal qualifications that you need to attain other than sitting an exam. So I can kind of understand, but I'd like to see that change. But yeah.
Sure. But I mean, even so, for the bigger events, they're going to obviously have referees that are getting a better reputation. So the referees that perform better are going to get invited back to or asked to attend these bigger events.
Exactly. And I think it's just, for me, it's just now a matter of, the rule book. The rule book says what you can and can't do, so it's a matter of making a very simple yes or no call. And I just take all the emotion out of it. It doesn't matter who it is. You just have to make the call, regardless.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess going into a little bit more the technical side of things, especially for the people that aren't super familiar with powerlifting. Powerlifting, you have your squat, your bench, and your deadlift. In your mind as a referee, which one of those three has the most issues on a platform on competition day?
Oh, I don't know. That's really hard. You know, different people struggle with different things. I don't know. I guess it depends on the proficiency of the lifter. I think probably one of the more difficult ones for people is legal squat depth. So, you know, there's going to be different opinions out there on what that really means, but the interpretation that you should glean from the rulebook is the correct one, not what a gym bro says. So I guess we can talk about that a bit if you'd like.
Yeah, well, I guess why don't we maybe break it down into each of the three lifts. So you're saying, you know, for the squat, which is your first lift in a powerlifting meet, squat depth, you know, how low they have to get is one of the hot topics.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always in powerlifting, guys. For those that don't know, you have to actually listen. So if you have compliance issues, you're going to have an issue powerlifting because they give you calls on when you can re-rack the weights and when you can start your movements, things like that. And so in powerlifting, you're meant to get to parallel, below parallel. This is where the rulebook will say. All right, tell us what the rulebook says.
So I'll paraphrase a bit, but basically the rulebook refers to two reference points when judging a squat. So instead of using, you know, parallel or hip crease, I really don't like that. It refers to the top surface of the leg at the hip joint. So you're looking at where the hip joint is, so that pivot point, and you're looking at the top surface of the leg outside that. So from the side, and the top of the knee, which is the knee joint, so the bone. So those 2 points, obviously judges, as they gain more experience, they're going to be able to judge that a lot better and quicker and easier than when they start. And I think, you know, referees, when they start out, they're going to judge it far more harshly. I think that, you know, they're going to want to see some deeper squats than where they actually probably need to go.
Okay. So we're saying top surface of the hip joint on the top surface of the leg.
Yeah. At the hip joint.
Yeah. And the top surface of the knee. Now we're talking sort of the patella, because usually when you see guys squatting, they're going to have their quad, which is quite high, and then so it dips down to where their kneecap is. So which part are we looking at the
bone,
knee joint?
Yeah, the bone.
The bone.
So the hard, solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not that you can see that. But.
Yeah, no. We will do some demonstrations after this podcast. Okay, at the bone. Yeah. And so, you know, in the gym it's thrown around, we want to get to parallel or below parallel, or we want the hip crease. And the hip crease, I guess, is confusing because when people think hip crease, they're thinking basically where the top surface folds into the hip. So you're saying that's not the good way to think about it.
No, because if you're looking at it from the side, and we can have a look at that later, like a hip crease, because it's a variable distance, like it goes around the whole of the top of the leg, it's going to look probably in most cases deeper than where the actual reference point is that you should be looking at. So it's not an accurate way to judge depth, I guess.
All right. And you also mentioned there, you know, you have side referees, and then there's also a front or the head referee.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do they have different roles?
Look, the only thing that really differs is that the head referee gives the commands, and they're responsible for letting the lifter know when the bar is loaded and ready for them. This is something else that's a bit of a myth, is that head referees can't call squat depth from the front, and the reality is that they can. There's no rule in the rule book saying they can't. So there's simple rules of performance, and there's reasons for disqualification, and any referee can I guess, you know, say no, that's not the rules or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Would you find as a head referee though that you would call squat depth less than being a side referee?
Probably
because
less.
People with big quads could really obstruct that view of the hip.
Yeah, look, squats like stance and the amount of muscle or mass on someone's leg can affect how you see that. But if it's obviously high, I call it.
Yeah.
Like, in saying that though, in 23 competitions, I think I've called it 5 times. So it's got to be blatantly obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can we run through just a few dot points for people that are working on their squat in the gym? Sort of what would be a good 3 white light powerlifting squat in terms of calls, depth, movements, double movements, everything like that?
I guess, definitely wait for the commands. I think people, as they gain more experience in competition, they're less likely to make that mistake. But you often see it in people's like second or first competitions. They're so nervous that they forget. I've seen it at international level too, where lifters they just don't wait and they just start squatting and you look like an idiot. So just wait. Squatting to depth, so to that legal depth that we described earlier, making sure that in your ascent there's no double movement, so no downward movement of the bar and then moving back up.
Are they allowed to come up, hit a sticking point where that bar doesn't move and then continue on? Doesn't have to be continuous, it can stop as long as it doesn't go down.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then waiting for the rack call at the end as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And no stumbling before you get that rack command.
That's right. You got to make sure that you're nice and steady with that bar. Perfect. All right. Moving from squat, then we're going into the bench press.
Yep.
All right. Any particular hot spots on bench? Because I know in the gym, a lot of times you see when people get heavy, they just start shooting their butts up off the bench. Their hips rise. All right. So I'm assuming in competition, maybe again more for beginners than for advanced lifters, you see a lot of hips or butts leaving the bench, which wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That would happen. One thing that sometimes isn't as prevalent, but you do see it quite a bit sometimes, is I guess what's termed heaving. So it's where someone will lower the bar to their chest, and instead of having it motionless, they'll keep sinking it. And by the rules, you can still sink it, but it has to come to a stop before the head referee can say press. So that's something that happens. So I would say try not to do that. Try really practicing keeping that tension on your chest and pressing it straight up. The other thing is after you get the press command, you can't lower it back down into your chest and heave it up.
Right. Yeah, well, this was actually one of the points I wanted to bring up with you a little bit later, was with the pause on the bench press.
Yeah, we can talk
because,
about that.
So again, for those listening, when you're doing a powerlifting bench, that bar has to come down, make contact with the chest, and be perfectly motionless still.
Yeah.
So not just not sinking, but not wobbling a lot side to side as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that just because it's touching their chest, that's the pause. But like you're saying with the heaving, I would in the gym call it sort of you're letting your chest compress, or you're letting it sink into the chest a bit more.
Yeah.
That bar is still not still, so you have to really be pulling yourself up tight into that bar, so it is not going any downward movement.
Good technique,
Yeah, good technique is what we want.
Yes.
Absolutely, perfect. All right, so okay, that's good. So hip movement, also making sure that bar is nice and still. In the deadlift, that's probably one of the more simple. You just got to pick it up.
Yeah.
But again, you see a lot of we don't see a lot of, but there is probably hitching and ramping would be your two hot spots in the deadlift.
I'm not a fan of the term ramping either.
No. Okay. No. Would you just call it hitching?
No, I would just call it supporting the bar on the thighs.
Okay.
So that's how it's referred to in the rule book.
Sure.
Generally across all federations. So when you see that, what will happen is in its most extreme or exaggerated form, you would see like a lifter sitting back and holding the bar on their thighs and dragging it up. So the bar will generally stop, dig down into the legs, and then they'll use that leverage to pull the bar through to lockout. So that is a big no-no.
Yeah.
So try not to do that in training. It's it's obviously fine in strongman, definitely not in powerlifting.
Yeah, no, 100% legal in strongman, 100% not legal in powerlifting. No. So and again, that's just when it clears the knees, and then instead of continuing with your pull, you're just basically sitting down, letting it rest almost on top of the thigh there, and then re-angling to pull a different position. Not allowed, guys. Not allowed. Was there any other sort of myths that you wanted to talk about when it came to powerlifting?
That's probably it. I think my big two are definitely the use of the term hip crease, because that's inaccurate, and ramping, because that's not a term that exists in the rule book. And I think when you use terms like that, then you're actually detracting from the actual rules and you're making up something that doesn't exist. Sure. So you should just stick to the rule book, stick to what it says. If you don't understand, ask a referee.
Okay, so I guess another question that I had for you was along the lines of how reffing has affected your training or mindset going into training. I know that when I was playing rugby, I'd played for a long time, but when I started coaching, you really look at the game from a completely different aspect. You're changing your perspective, based on what is happening around you that you might not have realized before, or even taken note of before. So I was wondering, have you found that with powerlifting? And if you have, has it been positive or negative? Is it one of those things where there's now all this information that you know and you're trying to really be as perfect with everything, but you may be overthinking things? Or has it been a positive experience for you?
I think on the most part it's been positive. I definitely am a better lifter for it. So being a competitor as well as a referee, I think I have a far more intimate knowledge now of the rules. And I think on competition day, I'm far more at ease as well. Like, I know what's happening. I know what I need to do. I know where I need to be. I know how things work. I know how to, I guess, apply that to my training as well. So making sure I squat to depth most of the time. I pause my bench press. I lock out my deadlifts. You know, I do all of those things so I know that on competition day, I have nothing to worry about. So, yeah, I don't think it's been negative in any way. It's actually been really good. And I would encourage anyone that's that lifts to, get qualified as a referee. And
not just to give back, but because it will give them more well-rounded understanding of the entire thing?
Yeah.
Great. One thing that I wanted to bring up with you was this thought about extreme body positions in powerlifting. Now, I guess I'm going to ask you how common it is, how much you see it, but one of the big problems is, I think because powerlifting it's getting a lot bigger, but for the mainstream, it's still probably a little bit niche, like a bit of a niche sport.
Yeah.
You're going into high schools here in Australia, particularly, people are like, well, not really powerlifting, they're playing footy, playing rugby, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but all the videos, a lot of the videos that make it online, you see these crazy, crazy body positions, these people doing what looks like exorcism on the bench press, and their back looks like it's broken to get up there, and it's because it's within the rule set. Their shoulders are touching, their butt's touching. They have this ridiculous arch where the range of motion of the bar is a handful. Yeah, it's very impressive. It's a handful of centimeters. You might see it again with in some sumo deadlifters where their feet are so close, and by the time they actually get the weight off the ground, it's really only moving not very far at all. Yeah, right, compared to a normal, what people would deem a normal lift in the gym or what they're used to.
Yeah.
Do you think that is putting off general population because I think it just looks ridiculous? Do you think it's a good thing to have in the sport? What are your thoughts on that? Is it really that prevalent at all, or is that just really what makes it onto the social media, what people see?
Yeah, look, I haven't seen many instances of that in real life when I've been refereeing or even competing as well. I think there's only a handful of people out of hundreds that can actually get into those crazy positions. Like I've seen bench presses that have half a foot of range of motion, this much is ridiculous, and you see you're like, what? But it's within the rules, so they're technically allowed to do it. And I've similarly seen sumo deadlifts where their stances are so wide that it's a foot off the floor, so they're just sort of lifting it that far. I think it's not that prevalent. I think it's a bit freaky. It's a bit of a sideshow to see that kind of stuff, and it impresses me. But I think pure strength is more impressive.
Pure strength is more impressive. Yeah. Which leads me on to my next point, is that if you were the supreme leader of powerlifting around the world, and you could make any changes you wanted, what would you do? Because I agree that pure strength is really impressive. And when you look at para powerlifting, where they don't have the use of their legs, they basically lie flat on a table and just press the bar. And it's there's no leg drive, of which in normal powerlifting you see a lot of leg drive and these crazy, not crazy, but back arches.
I would die.
Is that sort of display of brute strength is really impressive. Would you, if you had complete control, would you try to change anything, or are you happy with how it is at the moment?
No, look, I think it's fine. I think, like I said, it's only a very small percentage of lifters that can do those crazy things here in Australia anyway, so I probably wouldn't change anything. I do find sumo deadlifts that have a very short range of motion a bit ridiculous though, so I don't know, maybe cut them out.
Cut the sumos out?
Yeah.
Oh, cut the sumos out. It's a good thing I'm a conventional lifter. I would banish. I would just have legs up on the bench, just nice flat body bench, because bench is the most useless one anyway. It's the most useless one anyway. Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. With your refereeing, is it the same qualification or the same level you can coach equipped and raw? Because
did you just say coach or referee?
Referee, equipped and raw?
I can referee both.
Yeah. Is there any differences for you? I mean, it's basically the same principles, but they're wearing equipment.
Yeah, it's the rules are the same. It's just that they're wearing different costume. Costume and equipment, whatever you want to say. That's how it's referred to in the rulebook. I sound a bit ridiculous. I've only ever refereed one equipped competition, so it would be difficult to say that I have lots of experience in that area, but they lift differently. So I think being aware of those differences.
The technique changes a lot to fill out the equipment.
Yeah. So, different style of squatting, different style of bench pressing, and even deadlifting as well. Yeah.
And you compete in Raw, and you prefer to referee Raw?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting further experience refereeing equipped lifting, but it's not very big in Australia, so it would be difficult. The only time I get to really do that is at a national event. So
sure.
Hopefully in 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Some more equipped lifters will come here.
So where is the next nationals?
CAPO Nationals will be here in Perth in 7 weeks' time.
Fantastic. So, and are they going to have a pretty good turnout, you think?
I think so. I think it's over half sold out already. There's a cap of 110 lifters spread over 2 days. So I'll be competing the first day and refereeing the whole of the second day to try and get upgraded.
And that will give you the upgrade hopefully to world level?
Hopefully, yeah. Assuming it all goes well.
Okay. And so we're just throwing out terms like, national level, world level. Mm-hmm. What is the system of progressing through the ranks of being a referee in powerlifting? Yeah,
look, it's generally, sometimes it'll differ between federations, but generally in the two federations I referee in, you start out as a novice referee, so that's the base level. The next level is state referee, then national, then world. So depending on your qualification, you can referee different types of competitions, but generally to get qualified as a referee, as a base level referee, you have to sit an exam and referee a novice competition.
Okay.
It's generally how it will work.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then aspirations for you going forward as a competitor and as a referee? I mean, you want to get that world level status on the referee.
Yes.
What about yourself as a competitor?
As a competitor, look, just I guess improve, get stronger. I've only been lifting consistently for about 3 years, so I'm I guess you would still class me as somewhat of a novice or almost an intermediate, but not quite, kind of in transition to that.
Transition to intermediate?
But, look, I really want to do well at Nationals. I didn't have a good meet a few weeks ago. I was really, really sick, but I still qualified for Nationals, so that was good. But, look, just keep getting stronger, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
That's the dream.
Oh, I knew
just
right?
Keep getting stronger.
Look, I'd love a 200 kilo deadlift one day. That would be incredible.
Would be awesome.
Yeah, as a conventional deadlift, that would be really cool.
That's right, conventional deadlift.
Conventional deadlift.
Conventional deadlift. That's right. No cheating simulators in here.
Yeah.
And so, what do you find the hardest part about being a ref?
I think for me personally, it's my memory. So I will remember everything that I've done in a competition, like refereeing, and my mind will replay it for days. Eventually it subsides, but that I find really difficult to deal with at times. I think, as in
you're judging your performance as a ref constantly after.
Yeah. So I remember all of the calls I made, and referees aren't, I guess. We're human. We make errors. It's like in any sport.
No.
Stop it.
Really?
I know, right? I mean, I never make mistakes. What? No, we make mistakes. I think as you gain more experience, you're less prone to making those mistakes, but you still make them. And if I make them, I certainly remember. But I remember lots of stuff, and it just replays through my head. But I think as well, coming down after a big competition, a lot of the competitions I referee are 2 or 3 days, and it's a lot of mental and physical strain on your body and on your mind and on your eyes, keeping that level of concentration and focus on the platform and on lifters for that amount of time. I remember at ProRaw last year, it was my first really big international meet refereeing, and I was making sure I was going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, get a big night's sleep. But I was awake for 3 or 4 hours just because of all the adrenaline that's flying around my system.
No, you should watch episode 7 of the Strength Institute podcast, where we have sleep scientists on, tell you how to get better sleep.
Oh, okay then. Yes. I should probably watch that. Oh, right. Everyone else should watch that too.
Everyone else should watch that too, yes. And so that's the hardest thing you find. Mm-hmm. What about the easiest? What came most naturally to you about being a ref?
I think all of it. I think it just suits my skill set as a person. I have an eye for detail. So I think when I'm refereeing, I see things very clearly. So I think that's also why I've been able to progress as quickly as I have through the ranks. I just see stuff. I just see stuff.
That's right. Sixth sense right here. Watch out.
Red light. Yeah.
Awesome. Looking back on the 23 comps that you've reffed so far, everything from local all the way up to these big invitationals, what have been what was the highlight standout event for you, whether it be a certain lift or someone winning or anything? What stands out as the highlight of your reffing career?
Yeah, look, I think definitely big dogs in Melbourne last year, or in Frankston last year. The message I got from the meet director, I will never forget it, asking me to referee. He's also the president of GPC in Australia. He's a really awesome guy, has a lot of passion for growing the sport of powerlifting. And I met him obviously at ProRaw earlier that year, and I got a message from him, I think it was in like September, so about a month out from the comp, I think it was. And he sent me a message and he's like, "Hey Zoe, how you going? Just wondering what t-shirt size you are." And I was like, I'm about to just get a free shirt, which is cool.
Yeah, everyone loves free shirts.
I mean, yeah, I love free shirts. I get lots of free shirts. It's great when you referee. Or I'm about to get like the biggest refereeing gig of my life. And I was like, okay, play it cool. Don't say anything stupid. So I responded and said, "Oh, hey, I'm a size medium in women's. Hope you're doing well." And he responded back and said, "Oh, good, because I want all my referees at Big Dogs to be wearing the same shirts."
Oh,
and
very cool.
It was very cool. It was in the middle. I was in the middle of my office, and I squealed. It was hilarious. Yeah, it was the best day.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, the competition itself was incredible. Like the caliber of athletes. For anyone that doesn't know, Big Dogs is an invitational for male super heavyweights. So the best of the best in the world lifting the most weight.
And super heavyweights, what weight class?
So anything above, it's usually anything above 140 kilos. There was one lifter last year, I think that was just under 140.
So these are big boys.
Very big boys. And I think the podium last year, they were all over 1,100 kilos. Totals,
yeah.
Yes.
And for those that don't know what a total is you're going to add your biggest squat, bench, and deadlift together. That gives you your total. Biggest total wins on the day.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And they were basically all over 1,100.
Yeah, the top three. Top three, which was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the winning?
Oh, you're testing me now. I think I can check, but I think it was like 1,105. That's probably wrong. You can probably check that out if you want. It's a lot, like really, really heavy.
Yeah, incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think the Australian squat record was broken that day. It was like 460 kilos.
Yeah.
Just incredible lifting. I think my favourite lifter on the day was definitely Odell Manuel. He's still Australia's #1 super heavyweight. And it was just incredible, like seeing these guys, because I could watch them warm up for every lift. It wasn't like I was stuck on the platform refereeing, because there's only one flight of guys. There's like 7 or 8 guys.
Yeah.
They have to have a certain break amount of time between lifts, because they're massive guys. They're lifting such huge amounts of weight. But yeah, the atmosphere was incredible, and just seeing that in front of my eyes was just.
So where's Big Dogs hosted? So I know that the ProRaw is hosted in sync with the Arnold Classic Australia.
Yep.
Is it its own standalone event, or is it put in with some sort of fitness
Big Dogs
expo?
is on its own.
It's on its own.
Yeah. So last year it was, or every year actually. So that was Big Dogs 3 last year. So every year they've had it at the Frankston Arts Centre.
Okay.
But I think this year it's moving into the city, which should make it more accessible for Gen Pop as well as everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll finish off now with, if you had a word of advice for anyone wanting to get into powerlifting or into powerlifting refereeing, what would that be?
Just give it a go. Don't be afraid to give it a go. I think a lot of the time people sort of see referees as sort of like a separate entity, but I think it's really beneficial if you lift as well as referee, because you know how both sides work. So I would say, don't be afraid. Just give it a go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Boys, girls, young, old, get involved, get stuck in. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Zoe, thanks very much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening and watching along. And if you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe, help the channel grow. Thank you very much.